I never thought I would share my story, but I think it's time for the entire world to know. I'm a 21-year-old millionaire who barely graduated high school, and this is my story. My grandfather had a 3rd grade education, and he moved his entire family from the urban cities of New Jersey to the suburbs. This one move changed the entire trajectory of my family. Without it, my father wouldn't have the judgment to raise me in a town where wealth was common and I could genuinely thrive. I am convinced that environment is at the core of most people's success. You can either be born into a good one or you can change yours for yourself. And this is where it all began. I was 4 years old and I rode on the short bus. I don't know where you grew up, but in my area, the short bus was something they used to label you. It normally meant that you had special needs of some sorts. You see, doctors said I had a speech impediment. I couldn't formulate sentences or articulate my words. It sounded like gibberish, and there was just something off. I knew it, my teachers knew it, my family knew it. It's crazy to think that now I speak on stages across the world, talking to you on this YouTube video, but it wasn't always like that. And that's because one day, I remember I was riding in the car with my dad, and I told him I didn't like to talk. And he asked why? And I said, because I sound different. And that's the moment I realized, because I sound different. And that's when everything changed. Because that's the moment where I realized and I learned a very important lesson in my life. It's okay to be unique. It's okay to be different. It's okay to stand out from the rest of the crowd. Emma Stone said it best. What sets you apart can sometimes feel like a burden, and it's not. And a lot of the times, it's what makes you great. So after finally being able to say things without people struggling to understand me, I realized one key thing, and that's persistence beats resistance. And believe it or not, that is a core value in my personal life, but also in my company. And it's gonna come up again later on in the story. So remember that, persistence beats resistance. And without this one lesson, I would not be where I'm at today. It's gonna make a lot of sense in a second. So growing up, I saw a lot of death, and Steve Jobs said it best. Death may be one of life's greatest inventions because it's a change agent. It makes way with the old and brings in the new. So my father owns his own businesses. He owns funeral homes. In order to spend time with him, I would have to go to work with him. I loved it, every single minute of it. I would help him out after school and on the weekends carrying flowers for funerals and pushing caskets. Crazy, right? I know. I learned a skill that is super, super rare in the world, which is hard work, especially in the times that we live in now. So my dad always taught me that if you don't work, you don't eat. And there's no coincidence between how I was raised and where I'm at currently with my financial situation. It also programmed me to be a serious person. So I never understood why I was more mature or took things more seriously than most people. Looking back on it, I'm convinced this was the reason why. And I guess that's also why I've been able to deal with so much of the stress that inundates me with business. And then someone died. My Uncle Rodney passed away from lung cancer when I was in the 4th grade. I saw him on his deathbed. That was one of the hardest things I have ever been through in my entire life. But I also learned a very important life lesson from it. Life is short and you have to live it to the fullest. And to this day, I have a notification that goes off on my phone that says, you're gonna die one day. And it reminds me every single day. And that's because when I'm on my deathbed, I don't want to have regrets on how I lived my life. And I think that's a big reason as to why I decided to just start a business before even finishing high school. It took some time, but I realized going to school and getting a high-paying job just leave me to regret. I was searching for another option, something more than just college. That's when I came across a TED Talk from Robert Kiyosaki on why the rich are getting richer and the poor and middle class were getting poorer. And this changed my life forever. And this is when I realized that getting wealthy wasn't luck, it was a skill. And if I wanted a life of freedom, then I would need to be wealthy so I could do whatever I wanted with whomever I wanted to do it with. So I bought his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that's when my real education began. And I'm willing to bet that so many people watching this, and you specifically, have had that feeling, that knowing this, that you were destined for something greater, and I did too. I knew that the traditional route was not the path for me. And I think for a lot of people, they need that permission or that sign. And Rich Dad, Poor Dad was that permission for me to pursue what I knew was the right path for myself, not what the rest of the world was trying to shove down my throat. And as Robert Frost puts it, I took the road less traveled, and that made all the difference. things. But at the end of the day, education is useless without action. So I bought a vending machine and I bought an ATM because Robert Kiyosaki said,
"The rich don't work for money.
They have money work for them." That meant passive income. And I saw those two businesses as a way to generate passive income. And a few months later, I failed both of them.
I have failed.
At the same time, my friend told me to watch this webinar. It was a guy named Billy Wilson. Billy was a college dropout with a crazy high GPA, and he found this thing called SMMA, Social Media Marketing Agencies. I watched his free training where he was trying to sell me on his course. He drops the price and I was like, I'm in, but I didn't have the money. So I borrowed the money from my dad and used OPM. That one $500 course was the catalyst for me to make over $4 million by the age of 21. But for the first 4 months of me starting my marketing agency, nothing. And then all of a sudden I closed my first client for $1,500 after cold calling every single day in the school bathroom. While the other kids were vaping in the bathroom, I was cold calling in the stalls trying to make money. I made a lot of mistakes through that entire time period and failed a bunch, and maybe I'll do a video on all my failures with the first agency so that you guys don't make the same mistake. I was 8 months in and we hit our first 6-figure run rate month. At this point, I was a senior in high school, and that's when I decided not to go to college. Maybe partly because I totally failed the SATs. So growing up in a majority Asian American town, the traditional education system was put on a pedestal. They thought I was stupid for not going to school. Even though I was making more money than my teachers, they thought I was stupid for not going to school and even thought I'd be homeless by 25. I just smiled because I knew where I was going. And then in 2019, a lady decided to eat a freaking bat or maybe a test tube slipped out of a lab in China, and the entire world turned upside down. A few months later into 2020, my marketing agency that serviced gyms lost all of its clients in probably a span of a few days. Maybe college wasn't a bad idea after all. To make matters worse, my entire family had COVID at the time. I was isolated, I was lost, and I was confused. 30 days went by of me trying every different business model I could. From surplus funds to almost taking a sales job for a company, things were not looking good. And then by the grace of God, I got connected to Joel and Sergio, who ran a company and a coaching program called 7-Figure Agency at the time, which is now known as Agency Lab. And I jumped in, I got started. I started an e-com agency, we took it to $100,000 per month. That agency slowly died and we had to sell off all the assets for it. Drop a comment below if you guys want me to make a video on what happened so that you guys don't make the same mistake. If we get enough comments, then I'll make a video about it. So quite frankly, I didn't enjoy the e-com agency at all anyways. So after that, I partnered with my first ever mentor, Billy Wilson, and we began coaching agency owners on how I scaled my agency to 7 figures. And we put on one of the craziest events for agency owners, and one of my good friends, Matt Shields, was there. And at that event, he partnered with this guy, one of my students named Jensen, and they started scaling up some real estate marketing agency. A few months later, Matt hits me up and asked if I wanted to partner with him. I said no. A week went on, and honestly, I was just bored of coaching agency owners. And I decided to call Matt back. I decided to hop in and try it out. We took the agency from $17,000 per month to our best month, $293,000 in monthly revenue in about a year's time. So at the time of recording this, we're doing some super cool things with Estate AI, my real estate marketing agency with Matt. At this time, I'm diversifying my time. I'm investing in real estate, getting my health on point. I'm even learning how to fly a plane right now. I don't know what's next, but that's a beautiful thing. And it reminds me of the movie Night of the Museum, when Robin Williams was asking this old general, what are we gonna do tomorrow?
I have no idea what I'm gonna do tomorrow.
How exciting.
And he said, I don't know. And that's a beautiful thing. So what's next for me? To be honest with you, I'm not sure, and that's a beautiful thing. I'm super excited to test out YouTube and really share my story and share what's worked for me and my success to buy more real estate. Who knows? Maybe you'll even see me running for president one day. But at the end of the day, I don't know what it is, but I do know that it's gonna be big because I have that knowingness, because I was brought up in an environment where success was normal, because I learned at a very young age that if you don't work, you don't eat, and you must be persistent or else you will never beat resistance. And no matter what you do, make sure you do it to its fullest, because what is playing small costing you? Because when I'm on my deathbed one day, I don't want to have regrets. So I want to leave you with this story, and it's this guy, he's walking in New York and he falls in this hole and he can't get out. A guy walks down the street And the guy in the hole shouts up, "Hey you, I'm stuck in the hole. Can you help me out?" The guy just walks along. Then a doctor comes by. The guy in the hole shouts up, "Hey doc, I'm stuck in the hole. Can you help me out?" The doctor writes out a prescription, throws it down in the hole. Then all of a sudden, a priest comes along, and the priest asks, "Hey father, I'm stuck in the hole. Can you help me out?" The father writes out a prayer, throws it down in the hole. And then all of a sudden, this guy named Joe comes walking along. The guy in the hole shouts up, "Hey Joe, I'm stuck in the hole. Can you help me out?" So you know what Joe does? He jumps in the hole. And then the guy in the hole says, "Joe, are you stupid? Now we're both down here." Joe says, "Yeah, but I've been down here before, and I know the way out." I'm sharing my story and I'm making these videos to show you what's possible. If a kid who had a speech impediment and rode the short bus could do it, I promise you, you can do it too. Don't be a victim, be a victor. I can't wait to make more videos like this. I hope this pushes you to keep going. Peace.